But what would make you racist is if, of course, you wouldn't associate with this person because of their race, or you would see them as different than you. So anyway, that's a little bit about that, and I wanted to talk about that. But I want to talk a little bit about my experiences as well with racism, and a little bit, because I think there's some really good stories that you guys might want to hear and understand what it's like to be a minority. Those of you who don't know, I'm biracial. My mother is Caucasian. My father is black. So I'm absolutely aware of racism, and I have been aware of it all my life because of my races, I should say. So I wanted to say that, when I was born, I absolutely had I was very fair. I had like really light brown, blondish kind of hair, and I had blue eyes. And my mom's family, with whom she was estranged because she was dating a black man or married a black guy, they said she'd had an affair because I looked like a white child, and they said they all thought she had an affair. And so as I got older and my eyes turned to green, and a greenish hazel green or whatever, and I got curly hair, dark hair, and I had an olive complexion. And so, then they're like, oh, okay, so, she didn't have an affair, whatever. But the interesting thing is, throughout my life, I've looked different depending upon what period of life that I was in. So, for example, because I'm biracial, like when I was younger, there was one part of my life when I was younger, maybe 8 to 10, I looked more black. And then when I turned to get to my puberty years, between like, I'd say 12 and 14 or whatever, I looked more Hispanic, and 16 even, 17 even. So I looked more Hispanic then. So, and then as I've gotten older, people seem to think, just people who don't know me, seem to think I'm Middle Eastern, even though I'm not. So I've been called, throughout my life, various things depending upon how someone perceived me, which brings me to the point I was going to make, which is racism is about perception, because depending on how people perceive me, it dictates how I'm treated by them, depending on the person, obviously. So if someone has a bias towards black people, but they perceive me to be Middle Eastern because that's how they think I look, and they're not going to be racist, they're not going to treat me badly. Yet, if it comes out later that I am biracial, they may then feel uncomfortable because I'm half black. So, in my opinion, racism is about how you perceive people. It's not about what people really are. So that's why, President Obama, although he is also half white and half black, just like I am, he looks more African American than I do. And so he's perceived by people as a black man. And he's therefore treated as such, even though he is equally black as he is white. And, which brings me to the whole one-drop rule, and that is, during the slave days, people who were actually biracial, or any part of them was black, there was what was called the one-drop rule, where if you had any black in you at all, you were considered black. And so that whole belief system has carried forward throughout the history of the United States. And people still have that belief system. So if you are biracial, then if you're half white, you're equally white as you are black, then you're black. That's how people say you are because of the whole one-drop traditional belief system. And if you're Hispanic and white, then you're Hispanic. If you're da-da-da. It's like, the problem is people in the Caucasian race have always said that, oh, well, mixing races is wrong or something, because mixing races is wrong. Well, anyone who would say that mixing races is wrong is a racist. I mean, period. There's no hemming and hawing about it. And a person who would say that probably is not going to care if I call them a racist or not, because they are a racist. And a lot of racists say, oh, I'm not a racist, but I don't think that the races should mix. Or I'm not a racist, but I don't think blacks are as good as whites, or Hispanics are as good as whites, or Middle Easterners are as good as, it gets really tiring hearing the same shit over and over again. And I think people should realize that when they say these things, what an idiot they sound like. And I find that, the thing about me is, yes, I'm biracial, and I'm proud to be biracial because I have the rare opportunity, I have the rare understanding of what it means to be of two races. So, and as I said earlier, depending upon what race I'm perceived as, it defines how I'm treated. But no matter what, I am half black and half white. And so, for my personal experience being biracial, it has been ridiculous because of how I'm treated by people of all races. On the white side of my family, which is the side I grew up with, the side I was raised with my mother and not my father, on her side of the family, I actually always felt like, I always felt loved and I felt accepted and all those things because I was made to feel that way, especially by my mother and my grandmother and things like that. Okay, wait, I have to pause for a second. Gunslinger in the chat room is saying, even animals know it's not right. You never see a horse and a cow fuck. Well, that's just a perfect example of the ignorance I'm discussing here. He's saying you never see two animals of two different species fuck. Well, first of all, that's the whole point, Gunslinger. If you think that someone who's black and someone who's white are two different species, you're wrong. They are not two different species. They're human beings. They're both human beings. Despite the fact that you may see someone who is black as a separate race, or it's not as a separate race, a separate species, is complete nonsense, complete bullshit. Okay? So you're simply saying to me right now that you find that black people are of a separate species because you're saying that horses and cows don't fuck. Well, the reason they don't is because they're different species. It's not like saying a thoroughbred horse and a quarter horse or whatever, or a stallion and this quarter horse don't fuck. That's separate because they're the same species. You might want to get your science straight, Gunslinger. Anyway, I've got, as I was saying though, people who are, hold on, I've got some, whoever is messaging me, I can't read what you're saying because the font is not coming through. I apologize. But anyway, so that's the thing I'm talking about. These people who are so ridiculous. And then here we go again. Now Gunslinger is saying God forbids race mixing. Well, God is not, your God is not my God, first of all. And God is who you claim God to be. God, I've had this discussion many times. My God is not your God. And so if you feel that God believes that you should mix the races because you believe in some book that was written, 5,000 years ago, that you believe that, if you believe that, that's your right to believe that. But it's not right. It's bullshit. You should read the Bible also. Gunslinger, you should really read the Bible because you may not have written it. He says, read the Bible, I did not write it. Well, the thing is, Gunslinger, the Bible is written by human beings, not by God. Thank you, Ange. I appreciate that. You're correct. Ange says the Bible is written by humans, by man, not God. And that is correct. It's so fucking ridiculous, these people who use the Bible to defend their bigotry. It's sickening to me. I'm so sick of it because they're idiots. Anyway, I've got another caller I'm going to take. 1 second. You're on the air.
Meow.
Hi, how are you?
I was doing okay until Gunslinger had to say what he did.
Yeah, why don't you say what you have to say about what Gunslinger said?
Okay, Gunslinger, I want to keep peace, but mentioning that nobody should mix races and so forth, let me ask you something. You're sitting in a hospital and your wife, your mother, or your father, or one of your siblings, or one of your children needs an organ transplant. Would you care if it got mixed then? What if the only part that could match happened to be an Hispanic, a black, a Polak like myself? You take the skin off of every human being and you got the identical pieces right there.
That's right.
pisses me off so much when somebody says that we're not the same. The only difference is the color of our skin. And I tell you, you go out and you stay in the sun every day of the summer, and your skin's starting to darken also.
That's right.
So let's not get into some of this stuff.
Well, let me say this, too, that, and this is just based on science, and this is based on what I've learned and what I know from what I've read, and people can, they can debate me on it or whatever, but this is what I have understood has happened and why there are different races. The reason that there are different races is because, first of all, everybody started off in the same place in Africa, just FYI, and everybody started off from Adam and Eve, whatever you want to call them, the first two humans, whatever, that evolved into that, whatever your belief system is. And then, everything was all together. There's Pangea or whatever. People, the continents were closer together than whatever. So people started to wander over time and become more nomadic, and they did, and they wandered to different parts of the world. And as they got separated over thousands of years of evolution, differences took place in their DNA as a result of where they lived. So people who were in Africa had darker skin and had more resistant hair to the wet water, things like that. People who lived in Europe had lighter eyes to help with what they could see in the winters and things like that. They had lighter skin as a result of not being exposed to the sun as much. They lost the melanin that they had initially. I mean, there are all these reasons that people are the way they are racially. But the fact is, everybody is the same race. We're all the same human race. And there is no difference, just like Lady Cougar was saying, there is no difference between us other than the skin that covers our bodies. And to differentiate between people based on something so completely superficial, as you were saying, if somebody needed a lung transplant, a heart transplant, kidney transplant, needed a blood transfusion, whatever, do you think that they're going to care that it came from a black person or something else? And if you feel that way, Gunslinger...
He's on. He says he's called in.
His hand's not up. His hand's not up.
Click on the one, Gunslinger, if you want to.
If you want to speak, click on one, because I see your number, but I don't see you. Your hand's not up. So anyway,
I will say that I did watch a show one time, and I thought mainly they were probably trying to aggravate the audience or whatever. It was on a Jerry Springer show before he started the stuff he was doing now. He had some racists on there. He had some KKKs and white supremacists. And this one white supremacist said that, because they asked him the same question I just said, and he said if it had to deal with a Jew or a black giving his daughter an organ, he'd let her die.
Yeah, that's sickness. That's mental illness. That's
right.
Mental illness. And
that's
I really think
ignorance.
Yeah, well,
that's
ignorance,
for
obviously.
Somebody that just don't give a damn then about their family and wants to stand up and look like they're all high and mighty.
Right.
And to beat all, his daughter was right there, and she agreed that she wouldn't want an end's
blood or whatever.
Yeah. But it's easy to say when it's not happening.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I think I actually think, I was going to say this later in the show, but I actually think that racism is some sort of mental illness because, and that just kind of exhibits the fact that it is, because if you would rather someone you really love, supposedly, to allow them to die rather than to take someone else's kidney or organ or whatever, to let them live because they're of another race, when that kidney that's in a black person or an Hispanic person or a Middle Eastern person works the same way it does in a Caucasian person. That's why you can do a transplant. Because they are the same thing, they would rather let them die. That is mental illness, if you ask me. It absolutely is. And I actually, people like Gunslinger who think the way he does, I feel sorry for him. I think he is living a life filled with hatred, apparently. And I didn't know he felt that way, because he's been on my show a few times before talking about things we may have disagreed on. And
I know. I was at a show last night, Crazy Wolf Radio, and he was there, and I wouldn't have thought that of him either.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, too, is that I was going to talk about that, because the thing is, you don't know who is really racist. You